Jake lived in a small city, far from the busy streets of the capital. He wasn't famous, just an average guy who worked at a local tech shop. Most days were the same. He'd wake up, go to work, and return home. But today, something strange was about to happen. It was just after sunset when Jake left the shop. Feeling tired after a long day, the streets were quieter than usual. As he walked down the alley behind his building, he heard a soft sound, almost like a whisper. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then he heard it again, curious. Jake turned the corner to find the source. What he saw took his breath away. A woman, no. Something that looked like a woman was standing in the shadows. Her skin was a deep shade of purple, smooth and glowing softly in the dim light. Her hair was long and silver, flowing like liquid metal. She looked out of place, and yet Jake couldn't look away. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, Jake felt as if the world had stopped. There was something strange about her gaze. It wasn't just the color, which was a bright green unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was the way she looked at him, as if she was waiting for him to do something. He took a step forward, unsure of what to say. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, his voice a little shaky. The woman didn't answer at first. She just stood there, looking at him as if trying to understand him. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "I need help," she said. Her accent was different, unlike any language Jake had heard before. "Please, I'm lost." Jake blinked in confusion. "Lost? What do you mean? Are you okay? You look different." She nodded slowly. "I am not from here," she said, taking a step closer to him. "I didn't mean to come. I was running from them, the ones who hunt us." Her words were broken, like she was trying to find the right ones. Jake frowned, not fully understanding what she meant, but he could see fear in her eyes, the kind of fear that was real and deep. "Who's hunting you?" he asked, his heart starting to race. He didn't know why, but he felt like this woman, whatever she was in serious danger. "The Galactic Council," she said quietly. "They want me dead." Jake's mind raced. He had heard stories about aliens, about the laws that kept Earth safe from strange visitors. Aliens were illegal here. The law was clear. No alien was allowed to set foot on Earth. If anyone was caught breaking that rule, they would be arrested and sent away, never to return. So why was this woman here? Why did she come to Earth? Why Earth? Jake asked, his voice soft. "Why come here?" She took a deep breath and glanced around, her eyes scanning the dark alley. "It is the only place they do not watch. I thought maybe I could hide here." Jake's heart sank. He knew what she meant. Earth was one of the few places in the galaxy where aliens could escape the eyes of the powerful councils that ruled the stars. But being here was dangerous. If the authorities found out, they would come after her, and Jake would be in trouble for helping her. But something inside him told him to help her, to trust her. She seemed so vulnerable, so lost. Jake took another step closer, his hand reaching out slowly. "I can help you," he said, his voice firm. He didn't know why, but he meant it. He wanted to help her. The woman Lyra, as she introduced herself, looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and relief. "You would?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jake nodded. "I will. I don't know how, but I can't just leave you here alone." For a moment, they just stood there, looking at each other. It felt like the world had stopped. Jake didn't know why, but he knew he couldn't turn away. Lyra was something out of a dream, a creature from another world, and yet she was standing right in front of him, asking for his help. Lyra took a deep breath, as if gathering strength. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not know what to do now, but I will trust you." Jake didn't know what he was getting into, but in that moment, he made a decision. No matter the danger, he couldn't just walk away. He had to help her. No matter who she was or where she came from, she needed him, and he couldn't ignore that. Jake led Lyra through the quiet streets, trying his best to stay calm. It was late, and the city was mostly empty, but every time a car passed, he couldn't help but feel like someone was watching them. Lyra stayed close to him, her eyes darting nervously from side to side, always looking over her shoulder. She didn't speak much, but Jake could see the fear in her expression. They reached Jake's apartment after a few tense minutes, and he quickly ushered her inside. Once they were safe in his small living room, he locked the door behind them and let out a long breath. Lyra didn't seem to notice. She was too focused on the strange environment around her. She looked at the walls, the lights, the furniture, as if she had never seen anything like it before. Jake cleared his throat. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, watching her as she took in everything. She seemed overwhelmed, as if Earth was more alien to her than she had let on. I do not know what to say," she replied, her voice still shaky. "Everything here is strange, but it is safe, for now." Jake nodded. "Yeah, you're safe here, at least for tonight." He sat on the couch and rubbed his hands together. "You can stay here until we figure out what to do." Lyra glanced at him, her green eyes bright but filled with sadness. "And what do we do next?" Jake didn't know. He wasn't a soldier, a hero, or some kind of expert. He was just a regular guy who had made a decision to help an alien woman he barely knew. His brain was racing with thoughts. What if the government found out? What if they traced her back to him? There was no easy way out. "I don't know yet," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I can't just turn you in. You're not dangerous. You need help. And I'm not going to let anyone hurt you." Lyra's eyes softened at his words, but then her face clouded again. "But it is dangerous for you too, isn't it? If they find out, you will be punished." Jake shook his head. "I don't care. I'd rather take the risk than leave you to face them alone. You shouldn't be running for your life like this. No one deserves that." He paused, feeling the weight of his decision pressing on him. "But we need to figure out where you can go. If you stay here, the government will eventually track you down. It's not safe for either of us." Lyra lowered her head, her long silver hair falling around her face. "I have no place to go. My people, my family, they have no home now. We were cast out of our world." Jake's heart ached at the sadness in her voice. She didn't just need protection, she needed someone to believe in her, to help her find a future. And right now, Jake was the only person she had. "I'll figure something out," Jake said, standing up. He began to pace the room, his mind racing for ideas. He had no experience dealing with anything like this. He could call the police, but they would turn her in. The government would capture her, and she'd be gone. No, that wasn't an option. "There must be someone I can trust," he muttered to himself. His mind wandered to a few names, people he knew who might be able to help, but could he risk involving them? What if they turned her into? Lyra watched him carefully, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. "Jake, I do not wish to cause you trouble. If you want me to leave, I will go. I do not want to bring danger to you. But please, you must understand I cannot go back to them. I have nowhere else to run." Jake stopped pacing and turned to face her. There was a look of determination in his eyes. "You're not going anywhere. I'll figure out a way to help you." He crossed the room and sat down next to her on the couch. "You're not alone anymore." Lyra looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find the truth in his words. "Why are you helping me? I'm not your responsibility." Jake sighed and leaned back on the couch, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I guess I just can't stand to see someone suffer when I can do something about it." He met her gaze again, his voice more firm this time. "You deserve a chance. A real chance at life, not hiding and running all the time." Lyra nodded slowly, her expression softening. "You are kind, Jake. I do not understand your world, but I am grateful for your help." Jake smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. He wasn't sure what to do next, but he knew that no matter how dangerous things got, he couldn't turn his back on her. He didn't care if the world thought aliens were a threat. Lyra wasn't a threat. She was just a woman, lost and far from home. "We'll figure it out," Jake said again, trying to convince both Lyra and himself. "But right now, you need to rest. We've got a long road ahead of us." Lyra nodded and lay back on the couch, curling up in a way that made Jake realize how exhausted she truly was. He watched her for a moment, his thoughts spinning. There were so many things he didn't know, so many dangers they would face. But for now, At least, they were safe, and that was something. Jake stood up and walked over to the window. The night outside was quiet, but he could feel the weight of everything pressing on him. The decision was made. There was no turning back. Now, he turned to Lyra, who was already asleep, her face peaceful despite the chaos that surrounded her. "I'll protect you," Jake whispered to the empty room, "no matter what." The days following Lyra's arrival were strange for Jake. It wasn't just the fact that an alien someone from another world was living in his small apartment. It was the weight of the secret they were carrying. Every time someone knocked on his door or he heard footsteps outside, a rush of panic would grip him. Anyone could be looking for Lyra, and the government didn't take kindly to illegal aliens. Despite the tension, life slowly began to return to normal, at least on the outside. Jake still went to work at the tech shop, though he was always careful to leave and return at odd hours, never when he thought anyone might notice. Lyra, for her part, stayed inside the apartment most of the time. She had no choice. It was the only place where she felt safe. But even within the four walls of Jake's apartment, she was a constant reminder of the dangers they both faced. Lyra spent her time trying to adjust to Earth's way of life, and Jake did his best to teach her. He showed her how to use the internet, how to read and write in English, and even how to cook basic meals. She was a quick learner, eager to understand the world she had stumbled into. Still, there was something haunting in her eyes, an underlying sadness that Jake couldn't shake off. Every time he saw her looking out the window, as if hoping for something or someone to appear, it reminded him that she didn't belong here. She was running from something much bigger than he could even imagine. One morning, Jake returned to his apartment after a long shift. The moment he stepped inside, he could feel that something was different. The apartment was too quiet. Lyra wasn't sitting on the couch, as usual, reading through the books Jake had given her. She wasn't cooking in the small kitchen either. "Lyra?" Jake called out, his voice sounding louder than usual in the empty room. He quickly moved through the apartment, checking every room. Panic began to rise in his chest. What if she'd left? What if she'd decided to run? Then, as he stepped into the bedroom, he found her sitting on the window ledge, her gaze fixed on the city outside. The soft light from the setting sun cast long shadows across her face, making her look even more distant than usual. Jake's heart skipped a beat, but he approached her slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hey," he said softly, "you okay?" Lyra turned to face him, her eyes filled with a quiet sorrow. "I was just thinking," she said, her voice low. "I cannot stay here forever, Jake. I know that. You have been kind to me, but I am a danger to you. Your world is not mine, and soon someone will come looking for me." Jake sat down next to her, trying not to show how much her words hurt. He hadn't really thought about what would happen in the long run. All he knew was that he couldn't abandon her now. "I'm not going to let them take you," Jake said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We'll figure something out. You don't have to go anywhere." Lyra shook her head. "You are a good person, Jake, but you cannot stop them. They are powerful. I should never have come here. You should not have helped me." Jake felt a pang of guilt. He couldn't argue with her. He wasn't a fighter. He was just a guy trying to do the right thing. But this was bigger than him now. He couldn't just walk away and let her face whatever was coming. "Look, we've got time," Jake said, trying to sound confident. "We don't know who's coming after you or when they'll show up, but we have to stick together. I'm not letting anything happen to you." Lyra turned her gaze back to the city, as if she could see beyond the buildings to a world she might never reach again. "I have no home," she said softly. "My people, they cast me out because I'm different. I thought Earth would be a safe place, but now I have only brought danger to you." Jake placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't think like that. You're not alone anymore, okay? We'll figure this out together." The room fell into a heavy silence, neither of them knowing what to do next. Jake wanted to believe that everything would be fine, that somehow they could stay hidden, that no one would find out. But deep down, he knew that was impossible. Sooner or later, someone would come looking for her. Later that night, Jake couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his bed, thinking about the risks, about the uncertainty of what would happen next. He kept thinking about Lyra and how, even though she was so different, she had become someone important to him. He couldn't just let her disappear. There had to be a way to keep her safe. The next morning, Jake made a decision. He needed help. He couldn't do this alone. But who could he trust? He had a few friends, people who might be able to help, but he was afraid of putting them in danger to Dot at the same time. Lyra wasn't getting any easier to hide. Jake noticed she was getting restless, pacing the apartment more often, glancing out the window as if she expected someone to come for her at any moment. That evening, when Jake returned from work, he found her standing at the door, ready to leave. "I can't keep hiding forever," she said, her voice firm. "I have to go. It's not safe for you here." Jake froze, his heart racing. "No," he said, moving toward her. "You're not leaving. Not like this." Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. "It's the only way, Jake. I can't put you in any more danger." Jake reached out and took her hand, his grip tight. "We'll find another way. You're not alone anymore. And you're not going anywhere without me." Jake had never felt as nervous as he did the next morning. Every time he stepped out of the apartment, he felt like someone was watching him. His mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Could the government already be tracking them? Had they found some trace of Lyra? Despite the tension, Jake did his best to go through the motions. He still had to work, still had to keep up appearances, but his mind was never fully on the job. Every ringing phone or doorbell made his heart skip a beat. He had learned to keep his distance from others except for the few people he could trust. Lyra, for her part, had started to become more anxious. She didn't speak much, but Jake could see it in her eyes. She was restless, constantly moving around the apartment as if she were waiting for something. She asked him more often about Earth's laws, its government, and whether people ever questioned his decision to help her. It was clear she didn't want to be a burden, but Jake refused to let her feel like one. She was his responsibility now, and he had no plans of abandoning her. But despite all their precautions, the danger was closing in. One evening, after a long day at work, Jake returned to the apartment to find the door slightly ajar. His heart skipped a beat as he rushed inside, his mind already filled with worst-case scenarios. The apartment was quiet. "Lyra," he called out, his voice shaking. He checked every room, his nerves rising with each empty space. Then, he heard a sound coming from the bedroom. He rushed toward it, but as he opened the door, he froze. There, standing near the window, was Lyra, talking quietly to someone. Jake felt his stomach drop. The man standing in front of her wasn't someone Jake recognized. He looked ordinary, maybe in his mid-30s, but there was something cold about his eyes. He was wearing a dark coat, his face hidden in the shadows. His voice was low and steady. "I'm here for her," the man said, his gaze shifting from Lyra to Jake. "You're in over your head, boy. She's a wanted criminal." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He knew instantly what this meant. This man wasn't here to help. He was one of them, one of the people hunting Lyra. "No," Jake said, stepping forward, trying to hide his panic. "No, you're wrong. You can't take her." Lyra's expression was unreadable, but Jake could see a flicker of fear in her eyes. She stepped away from the window, her body tense. "Jake, this is the person I told you about," she said quietly. "He's one of them, one of the bounty hunters." Jake's thoughts raced. He had no idea how this man had found them, but he knew one thing for sure. This was bad. Very bad. "You should have stayed out of this, boy," the bounty hunter said, his voice almost pitying. "She's not someone you can protect. The Galactic Council doesn't forget. They'll come for you too if you keep hiding her." Jake's fist clenched, his mind raced, thinking of all the ways this could go wrong. He couldn't let Lyra be taken. Not after everything they had been through together. But what could he do? This man was dangerous, and Jake wasn't prepared for this fight. He didn't have a weapon, didn't know what he was up against. "Get out," Jake said, his voice firm despite his fear. "You don't take her. Not while I'm here." The bounty hunter chuckled darkly. You're brave, I'll give you that, but you're also stupid. He stepped closer, his hand reaching into his coat. Jake tensed, ready to defend himself, but before the man could pull anything out, Lyra moved quickly. She raised her hand, and for the first time, Jake saw the full extent of her alien abilities. There was a flash of light, and the bounty hunter froze in place, his body stiff as though he had been paralyzed. Lyra had used her power to stop him, but Jake could see the strain in her face. This was taking a lot out of her. Jake, Lyra said, her voice strained. He's not the only one. More will come. We don't have much time. Jake's mind was spinning. We need to get out of here, he said quickly, grabbing her arm. Now, we can't stay. Not here. Not with him. But the bounty hunter was already struggling against the paralysis. You can't hide forever, he spat, his voice still cold. You won't get away. Lyra pulled away from Jake, her face set with determination. We don't have a choice. We can't keep running. She turned to Jake, her eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry. I should never have put you in danger. Jake looked at her, his heart breaking. He wasn't sorry. He couldn't be. He had made a choice. And no matter what happened, he wasn't going to abandon her. We're not giving up, Jake said firmly. We're not alone in this. I'll help you fight. With one last look at the bounty hunter, who was now struggling to move again, Lyra nodded. We need to go, she said. Before it's too late, Jake grabbed her hand, and they ran out of the apartment, their hearts racing. The world outside felt different now, more dangerous. But as long as they were together, Jake knew they had a chance. He wasn't going to let her go not without a fight. Jake and Lyra barely made it out of the apartment before the first wave of danger hit. They had to move fast, hiding in the shadows and taking back alleys to avoid the authorities. The city, which had always seemed so calm and familiar, now felt like a maze, full of places where danger could be lurking around every corner. Lyra moved silently beside Jake, her alien abilities allowing her to sense when anyone was close. Jake kept his eyes on their surroundings, trying to stay calm. He knew this wasn't just some random stranger trying to hurt them. The bounty hunter, the man who had come for Lyra, was only one part of a bigger system, a system that would stop at nothing to catch her. They found a small, abandoned building to take refuge in. It was dusty, filled with broken windows, and smelled of old wood, but it was the best they could do. Lyra collapsed on the floor, her body still trembling from the strain of using her powers earlier. Jake could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but she was determined. She didn't want to let him see how much the pressure was affecting her. Lyra, you need to rest, Jake said, sitting down beside her. We can't keep running like this. We need a plan. I know, she whispered, but the more we hide, the closer they get. I can feel them searching for us. Soon, it will be impossible to stay hidden. Jake's stomach twisted with fear. What if she was right? What if they couldn't escape? He had already put so much on the line for her, but now it felt like everything was unraveling. It felt like there was nowhere left to run. I won't let them take you, Jake said, trying to steady his voice. He had to be strong for her. Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude. You're so brave, Jake, but I can't keep dragging you into this. You're not just helping me, you're putting yourself in danger. I'm not worth it. Jake shook his head. Don't say that. You're worth everything. I'm not going to let you face this alone. Lyra tried to smile, but it was weak. She closed her eyes, resting her head against the wall. The silence between them was heavy, but Jake didn't know what else to say. They had to figure out a way to get out of this mess, but for now, they needed rest. Hours passed, and as night fell, Jake and Lyra grew more aware of the dangers closing in on them. They could hear the faint sounds of vehicles driving by outside, and occasionally, the flash of lights cutting through the dark. Jake's heart raced every time a car passed. Were they looking for her? For them? I'm scared, Jake, Lyra finally said, her voice quiet in the stillness of the night. I never wanted this. I never wanted to bring danger to anyone. I just wanted to find a place where I could be safe. Jake placed a hand on hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. We'll figure this out, Lyra. We have to. But the truth was, Jake didn't know how much longer they could run. They were running out of options, and the more they stayed hidden, the more their chances of getting caught seemed to grow. He was starting to feel the weight of the situation, the responsibility of keeping them both safe. Suddenly, the sound of a door creaking open echoed through the building. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He stood up quickly, trying to stay quiet, but Lyra's head snapped up. She could sense it, too. The danger was near. Jake motioned for Lyra to stay still and moved toward the back of the building. There was an old door that led to the alleyway behind the building. It was their only escape, but if they didn't act quickly, they'd be trapped. As they moved toward the back door, the sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. Then, they heard the unmistakable voice of the bounty hunter. "She's here. I know. She is. I can feel it." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. There was no time left. They couldn't stay here any longer. "Lyra, we need to go. Now," Jake hissed, pulling her toward the back door. But as he reached for the handle, the door slammed open with a force that shook the entire building. Standing in the doorway were two more figures, dressed in dark clothing, their eyes hidden behind masks. They didn't say a word, they just moved toward them quickly. Jake's heart sank. They had been caught. Lyra, still weak from the earlier encounter, stepped back, panic rising in her chest. "Jake, we need to fight back. We don't have a choice." But Jake, realizing the gravity of the situation, knew that fighting wasn't an option. Not this time. They were outnumbered and outmatched. There was only one choice left: run. Jake shouted. He grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her with him toward the back of the building. But the men were too fast. They quickly closed the gap, trapping them in a corner. The men spoke in a language Jake didn't understand, their voices cold and harsh. One of them stepped forward, his hands reaching for Lyra. "You're coming with us," he said, his voice calm but firm. Jake stood in front of Lyra, his body shaking with fear and anger. "No, you won't take her." But the man only shook his head. "It's already over. You should have stayed out of this." With one swift motion, the man grabbed Jake by the arm, pulling him away from Lyra. She struggled, trying to break free. But the men were too strong. Jake's vision blurred with panic, his breath coming in sharp gasps as they dragged him away. And in that moment, Jake realized the truth. They were caught. They had lost. Jake didn't know how long they had been trapped in that dark room, but the silence was unbearable. His body ached from the rough handling, and his mind was a whirl of fear and confusion. He couldn't stop thinking about Lyra. What would happen to her? Where were they taking her? Was she okay? The men who had captured them were quiet, watching them from across the room, their presence suffocating. Lyra sat beside him, her body tense, her eyes searching for an escape. But there was none. Jake knew that the more they stayed here, the more dangerous it would become for both of them. They had to get out no matter what. Suddenly, the door to their cell creaked open, and a new figure entered. This one was different. He wasn't wearing the dark, intimidating mask like the others. His face was calm, his eyes sharp and focused. He was tall, with a strong build, but there was something in his expression that didn't seem as cold as the rest. "Are they secure?" the man asked, his voice smooth and steady. "Yes, sir," one of the guards replied. "They're not going anywhere." The man nodded, turning toward Jake and Lyra. He didn't seem to see them as prisoners, not entirely. His eyes moved over them, but he didn't speak at first. For a moment, there was only the sound of the guards shifting uncomfortably. "I've been watching you too," the man said finally, his tone more thoughtful than commanding. "You're not what I expected. I thought you were just a kid caught up in something bigger than him." Jake's head snapped up. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze lingering on Lyra for a moment before returning to Jake. "It's not important who I am. What's important is that you've made a lot of noise, kid, and people are starting to notice." Jake frowned, his heart racing. He didn't like where this conversation was going. "We're not a part of some plan," Jake said, his voice defensive. "We're just trying to survive." The man chuckled softly. "Survival isn't always a choice." Sometimes you have to make your own path, even if it's a dangerous one. Lyra shifted beside Jake, her voice breaking the tension. What do you want with us? She asked. We've done nothing wrong. The man's eyes softened, but his face remained serious. You're right. You haven't done anything wrong. But the system doesn't care about that. They want you, Lyra, and they'll stop at nothing to find you. But it's not just them. There are others who want something from you too. Jake felt a chill run through him. Who else? The man turned, walking toward the door. You'll find out soon enough. But first, we have to get out of here. This place isn't safe for either of you, and it's only a matter of time before they come for you. Lyra looked up at Jake, confusion in her eyes. Who are these people? Why are they helping us? Jake didn't know the answer, but one thing was clear. The man who had spoken was different. He wasn't a typical government agent, and whatever his reasons, he was offering them a chance to escape. For now, that was enough. We don't have a choice, Jake said, glancing at Lyra. We have to trust him. Lyra hesitated, but then nodded slowly. Okay. The man opened the door, revealing a dimly lit hallway. He motioned for them to follow. Jake stood up, his legs stiff from sitting for so long, and he helped Lyra to her feet. They followed the man down the narrow hallway, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. As they walked, the man spoke again. There's a group of people who've been tracking the government's movements for a while. We don't always agree with how they do things, but they want to stop the persecution of people like you, Lyra. People who don't belong to this world but shouldn't be treated like criminals either. Jake didn't speak. He wasn't sure what to think. The more they moved through the building, the more questions filled his mind. Who are these people? What did they want with Lyra? And how could they stop the government from finding them? When they reached the back of the building, the man stopped and turned to face them. We'll be safe for now, but there's a lot of work to be done if you want to stay free, if you want to stop running. Jake looked at the man, his resolve hardening. What do you need us to do? The man's eyes narrowed slightly, as if evaluating Jake's determination. We need your help. You've already made enemies, and that means you've got leverage. But you're going to have to fight for it. It won't be easy, and it won't be fast. But you'll have a chance. Jake swallowed hard. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I'm not going to run anymore. Not when I know what's at stake. The man nodded. Good. That's the first step. They walked through a hidden door into another part of the building. This room was different, more organized. It looked like a safe house, a place where people could gather without fear of being found. There were others here, some with determined looks, others more wary. You're not alone in this, the man said, gesturing around the room. These are people who are fighting back, and now, so are you? Jake took a deep breath. This was it. There was no turning back now. He wasn't sure where this path would lead, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let Lyra face it alone. He would fight, even if it meant going up against everything he knew. Jake stood at the edge of the small camp, looking out into the distance. It had been a few weeks since they had joined the group. Since that night in the old building, everything had changed. They weren't running anymore. They were fighting back, taking a stand for something bigger than themselves. The safe house had become their new home. And despite the danger that still hung over them, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose. He had never imagined his life would be like this a few weeks ago. He was just a guy working at a tech shop, living a quiet life. Now, he was part of a rebellion, and the world around him was changing faster than he could keep up with. Lyra stood beside him, her expression serious as she stared out at the horizon. She had become a part of the group too, not just a fugitive, but a symbol of the fight. Her courage inspired others, and despite everything, she seemed more at peace now, knowing that she wasn't alone. How are you feeling? Jake asked quietly. Glancing at her, Lyra took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Better, every day. I feel a little more like I belong here. I know it's not safe, but for the first time, I feel like I'm fighting for something real. Jake smiled slightly, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I get that. We're doing the right thing. We're not just hiding anymore. We're making sure that people who want to hurt you won't get away with it. The group had been planning in secret, moving carefully, making sure not to alert the authorities. They had gathered information, built alliances, and started to push back against the people who had hunted Lyra and others like her. It was dangerous, and they still didn't know how far they could push, but it felt like a chance for change. Jake's mind wandered to the faces of the others in the camp. Most of them were just like him, ordinary people who had been thrown into a fight they never asked for. But some, like Lyra, had no choice. They had been born into the struggle. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Jake, Lyra, we need to talk. Jake turned to see one of the leaders of their group, a woman named Maya, approaching them. She was in her 30s, tough but kind, and she had been the one to organize the rebellion. What's going on? Jake asked, his heart skipping a beat. He could see the seriousness in Maya's face. We've got a lead, Maya said, her voice low. There's a convoy moving in a few hours. It's an important one. We can hit it, but we'll need everyone we've got. Lyra's eyes narrowed. What's in the convoy? Maya hesitated for a moment before answering. Information, weapons, supplies, everything we need to take the next step. But it's heavily guarded. Jake's mind raced. This could be the turning point. If they could take down the convoy, they would have the tools to strike back even harder. But it was risky. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what came next. But he knew they couldn't back down now. Not after everything they had sacrificed to get this far. We'll do it, Jake said, his voice firm. I'm in. Lyra looked at him, her expression serious. Jake, are you sure? We don't know what we're walking into. I know, he said, meeting her gaze. But we've come this far. We can't stop now. We're in this together. And I'm not turning back. Lyra nodded slowly, her resolve matching his. Then let's do it. For all of us. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Everyone in the camp was focused, moving quickly and quietly. There was no time for fear. They knew what was at stake. Lyra and Jake joined the rest of the group, ready to play their part. Each person was assigned a role, and the plan was set. As night fell, the group moved out, making their way through the woods toward the convoy's path. The moon was high in the sky, casting long shadows over the ground. Jake could feel the tension in the air, the weight of what they were about to do. It was the first real battle they had faced, and it felt like everything had led to this moment. They reached the clearing where the convoy was supposed to pass, hidden in the shadows of the trees. Jake crouched low, his heart pounding in his chest. Lyra was beside him, her eyes scanning the area with a mixture of determination and caution. It's almost here, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake nodded, gripping his weapon tightly. He had never used one before, but he wasn't scared. Not anymore. He had come this far, and there was no turning back. He wasn't just fighting for Lyra anymore. He was fighting for the future. The sound of engines filled the air, and the convoy appeared, moving slowly down the road. The guards were focused, unaware of the danger that was waiting for them. Maya gave the signal, and in an instant, the group sprang into action. It was chaotic, but controlled. There was a rush of movement, the sound of gunfire, and the shouts of orders. Jake and Lyra worked together, staying close, making sure no one was left behind. The battle didn't last long, but it felt like an eternity. Jake's heart raced with adrenaline as he fought alongside the others, doing his part to protect Lyra and the group. When the convoy was finally stopped, and the guards were taken out, the group moved quickly to secure the supplies and gather the information they needed. As the dust settled, Jake looked around. They had done it. They had won. But more than that, they had taken the first real step towards something bigger. They had shown that they weren't going to let fear control their lives anymore. They had taken back their future. Lyra walked over to Jake, her expression exhausted but proud. We did it, she said softly. Jake smiled, his heart swelling with relief. Yeah, we did. But even as they celebrated their victory, Jake knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more battles, more struggles ahead. But they were ready now. They had a team, they had a cause, and most importantly, they had each other.